really believe this. The delivery is every bit as important as the words themselves. I wrote a speech for Cliff Harris. He's doing a roast for Terry Bradshaw at his old college in Louisiana. So Cliff Harris called me and said, "Hey, you're the funny guy. Can you write me some jokes?" I went, "Oh my God." So I'm grinding it out and I write him. I mean, it was hilarious. I'm sorry, but it was hilarious. I said, "Now, Cliff, let me show you how to deliver these lines." "Oh, no, I got that." I said, "No, Cliff, you don't." So he goes to the roast. Vern went to MC the whole thing. That's when Vern and Terry Bradshaw were working on the games together. This was, I don't know what, 82, 83, something like that. Or 83, 84, rather. And they come back to the roast. I said, "Vern, how'd it go?" He goes, "Oh, it was fantastic." And I said, how'd Cliff Harris do? He goes, "Oh my God, he died. He just died." I said, well, he said, "Oh, he was horrible." I went, "Oh God."
Crickets.
So we then go, a couple months later, we go to the Cowboys kickoff luncheon, where I always spoke, and I kind of roasted the players and made jokes about the upcoming season. And, I had my moments, let's say. I had my moments. So I'm sitting there. I'm sitting next to Charlie Waters, and then Cliff Harris was sitting next to Charlie. And Cliff leans over during lunch. He goes, "Hey, thanks a lot, Hansen." He said, "I made a fool of myself in Louisiana." He said, "Those were the dumbest jokes ever." I said, "Cliff, I told you it's in the delivery." He goes, "Oh, the hell with that." I said, "Okay, let me ask you something." I said, "Do you remember the joke about the bald head or whatever?" I said, "Do you remember the joke about getting fat? Do you remember the joke?" And I'm going down this whole list. I said, "Do you remember those jokes?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, watch this." And I changed my whole mindset. I got up and I just went down the line and I picked out the players and made the same jokes and killed. I mean, I killed, right? And I'll never forget this. I just lay everybody out. I mean, the players were great. They were screaming, laughing. Tex Schramm, the Cowboys president, he's about dying. I sat back down after my little 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. And I swear to God, Charlie Waters just leans back in his chair and he goes, "Hey, Cliff, I think it's the delivery." But I think that's true. And it goes back to what you're talking about earlier with the cadence that I developed. I didn't consciously think that way. What started out was, okay, when I say something clever or funny or important or whatever, I've got to stop. And it just kind of developed into that. And then I got comfortable with it. And then it just kind of flows,
Well, it's quite a feat because, and I don't know if you memorize them because they're the commentaries.
No. I learned how to use a prompter.
Yes.
I learned how to use a prompter. Yeah.
But even with a prompter, that is hard to keep the cadence going, to keep the rhythm going, to not stumble. I mean,
a thing that I do that nobody else does, and I've never understood it. Like I've been asked to write articles for different newspapers and magazines and the like over here. I can't do it. I can't write sentences. So I write in phrases, and then I'll put like ... which means that's where I kind of pause. So when I'm reading the prompter, and I've pointed this out to our news anchors 100 times, they have their scripts for whatever reason written like regular written copy, like you're trying to read it out of a newspaper.
Right.
When my script comes up on the prompter, they couldn't very well read it because they didn't know the cadence of it. They hadn't practiced it, whatever. But I knew, okay, here's this long sentence. Yeah, just you speed through this. Oh, there come the dots. And I just pause or, like that little break, whatever. So it was easy to read. I mean, now other people couldn't do it. I mean, there were times when I would have something written out and I'd hand it to them and they'd kind of stumble through it and they'd miss the point I was trying to make, whatever. But it worked for me. It worked for me. But it was also easier to read because, you're reading a newspaper column. It's kind of hard to get that flow to it if you're not tremendously familiar with the copy. And I often wonder when I watch anybody, whether it's Mr. Biden or Trump or any politician, I'm perfectly okay with him reading a prompter, but every so often you'll see him kind of stumble. And I think in part, because it's probably written like a letter home. And reading just straight copy is hard. But if you separate it out, to where that's the point I need to punctuate there. I need to make a emphatic statement here. I need to stop here. And that's how I wrote it. And I don't know where that necessarily came from, but it certainly worked for me. And I think everybody should do it, quite honestly. I mean,
so the SMU story.
That was the life-changing moment. Yeah.
All right. So that's what's I forget the football player's name. Played for SMU, linebacker. The guy who came to you and said,
David Stanley.
David Stanley came to you and said, getting paid money. School's paying me.
Yeah.
And
the secretary came first, and then she introduced us to David Stanley.
Okay.
This is another example of, there wasn't any great investigative skill in the beginning. I'm sitting at my desk, and like the old novel, it was a typical day. The sun was shining, and it was a typical day. And the phone rings, and it's the secretary from SMU. And she said, Dale, I've got a story for you. And she goes, I think your station might be the only one in town willing to report it. And I'm like, what do you got? She goes, they're paying players. I went, no, they're not. I mean, they've been slapped down for this so hard. He goes, yeah, Dale, they still are. So I said, well, come on down. So she came down to the station. We all got her in a conference room. And then, like I've always said, and Bob Hitch was the athletic director, and he later said, well, you're taking the word of a disgruntled employee. I said, no, I'm not taking her word. I am using the word of a disgruntled employee because it's very unlikely that the university president's going to call me and tell me that. All of those great stories come from unhappy people. That's back to what we talked about earlier about the criminals. It's not the president of the Chamber of Commerce is not going to call you. The president of the Booster Club, who's also the president of the local bank, he's not going to call you. It's going to be some unhappy person. And then the players who go on the record, not going to be the star quarterback who's happy with his career. It's going to be the guy who thinks he got cheated. So we get that call. And then we started a very long, and this is where the pride of what we did means so much to me. We didn't just slap it on the air. We spent months nailing that down from every angle.
You did.
So that when we finally got it on the
test and FBI expert
handwriting analysis, FBI handwriting, a lie detector test for David Stanley. I mean, we had letters from the university where they had actually sent the money. And
how much money was it?
Amazing.
How much money was it? How much was he? How much were the players getting?
He was getting like $700 a month. Yeah. And but when he basically flunked out of school, he had a drug problem, and they stopped paying him. Now here again, not my problem, but he wanted money, and they said, "Well, we're not paying you anymore. You're not worth a damn." And okay, not my problem. Did they pay him or did they not? Is he basically blackmailing them, which I think he was? Not my problem. I mean, some people thought it should have been, but not to me. I mean, my only question, and I also said, I don't care if you pay him. I did a recent podcast and they said, well, isn't this exactly what's happening now in college athletics? Isn't that exactly what SMU got shut down for?
Yeah, NIL. Isn't that
exactly what it is?
Yeah,
I mean, exactly what it is. They have a booster club at SMU, which they had back in the 80s. And the booster club is paying all these athletes. Same thing. Now, the only minor difference is they go, well, they're doing commercials for us. No, they're not. I've never seen a commercial in Dallas with an SMU athlete. Never seen one. I don't even see newspaper ads. I mean, nothing. But they're all getting, several $1,000s. For what? Because they're a good athlete. They're a good basketball player, a good football player, whatever. I mean, it's a joke. But my point back then was I don't care what the rules are. I mean, I'm just saying these are the rules now. And what SMU is doing is unfair to all the other schools. And I don't care if all the other schools are cheating either. I mean, I'll expose what we got A&M, we got TCU. But you make up the rules. You sign on to abide by them. I'm going to expose it if you're cheating, which is what we did. And it changed, as I said, it was a life-changing moment because prior to 1986, I was, for the most part, I was your typical cheerleader sportscaster. I mean, I really was. I loved games. I didn't care who won or lost necessarily, but, I wanted that local team to win, and I'm Yaha. I tried not to say we, but I'm sure I did on occasion, whatever. But after 86, never again.
Why did it
86,
change you? Why did it change you?
it just created such a jaundiced eye view of sports that I never looked at sports the same way again. I don't know.
And just so people know that, these stories made it on air, and SMU got the first. Is this the first death penalty football?
And only
death penalty.
Yeah,
I mean, they got hit with a bunch of.
They got killed. I don't think the NCAA thought that the penalty would be as severe as it was. I mean, the after effects of getting the death penalty. I mean, it took SMU 15 years to crawl out from the hole that they had put themselves in, I would argue. But I think the NCAA thought, okay, we'll shut SMU down for a year, and then next year they're fine. No, it wasn't that way at all. I mean, it took them years to even get back to anything resembling.
They couldn't recruit for a long time. They could. I mean, there was all sorts.
Oh yeah, they lost scholarships, and so they're trying to play big time football with 20 guys on scholarship or something. I mean, while everybody else had 80. It destroyed SMU football, and rightfully so, though. In my opinion, I mean they were so out of control. I mean, we had the governor of the state of Texas, Bill Clements, was on the Board of Regents, and he says to the NCAA, "We're not paying players," which was obviously a lie. So Carol Nealon, one of our reporters, confronts Clements in the governor's office, and she says, "Well, did you lie to the NCAA?" And Bill Clements says, "I didn't have my hand on a Bible," which was the first documented case in my world of, I guess they do lie all the time.
Yeah.
And I just went ballistic. I mean, the governor of the state of Texas lied to cover up the slush fund scandal of paying players. And I don't know, for some reason, but I think everybody who knows me will tell you, the sportscaster that I was in January of 86 was not the sportscaster that I was in January of 87. And that's kind of when the commentary started coming a little more often. Not many people noticed, but I wrote some pretty decent commentaries back in the 80s, but we didn't have that social media thing to get them up and running. And they were all just kind of really hardcore sports driven as well. But
so how did
that's when I just
start? Yeah. When did because you became international, with the social media and at a
Michael
time,
Sam.
Yeah. I mean, it may have had something to do with who was in office at the time.
Well, I think what happened was I've been writing commentaries for 30 years, but like I said, not very many people noticed. I mean, locally people noticed, and they were somewhat intrigued that I would say some of the things I said. But I did write many social commentary. In that Sports Illustrated article, they referred to my political commentaries. Well, they're not political to me. Maybe I'm wrong here, but they were social commentaries. I support gay rights. I'm anti-gun, whatever. Which I realize we have indeed made a political issue, but to me, and this might be splitting that proverbial hair that's not actually there, but I'm writing about the social aspect of this and what this means to us as a society. And I did somewhat the same thing when I wrote about sports, but I didn't have Facebook and Reddit or whatever all those things are that spread it around the country. So when I wrote about Michael Sam, that was the first one that really went viral and went national. But I think there again,
he was
the gay football player from Missouri.
Player. Yeah, he was. He was about to be drafted. It was like on the eve of the draft, and then he spoke to Sports Illustrated or ESPN. ESPN, I think.
ESPN first.
He spoke to ESPN, and he came out as gay. And this was the first really football player who came out.
Here's another kind of a weird and again, it's kind of an example of how lucky I get sometimes. He was on ESPN on a Sunday night. Now, we do a 25-minute show. Excuse me. So he comes out on ESPN that, hey, I'm the gay football player from Missouri. But it's like 8:30 at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So Sean Hamilton, who was the sports director, my executive producer, he said, what do you want to do with that story? And I said, oh, man, I got no place to put it. And he goes kind of back to how everything flows. I mean, I can't just insert it there. It makes no sense. And I said, plus it's late. I got to change. We'll do something with it tomorrow. I mean, that's right. We'll do it tomorrow because I just don't have time to figure out how to rework my whole show to put this story in. Probably kind of stupid in hindsight, but that's what I did. So then Sean then says to me, well, this is great because we're short on reporters tomorrow, the scheduled vacations, whatever. I was hoping that you'd write a commentary about it to fill the time, just to fill the time. And I said, well, I didn't even know what I'd say. And he goes, well, think about it tonight and see if you come up with something. So I'm driving home and I'm listening to talk radio and I'm just getting madder and madder and madder. All these rednecks are coming out of the woodwork and saying some of the most ridiculously outlandish things. Now I'm home and I'm talking to my wife and she's like, well, yeah, you should write something. I said, I don't know what I'm going to write. So I sit down, I start scribbling some notes together. The next morning I get up, now there's more coverage and I'm like, how stupid are you people? And then it just clicked. So I go to the office and I write the commentary. And I always tell people this, I don't think I'd make it up. It took me like 8-9 minutes, to write it. But it was like 8 or 9 hours of thinking about it, right? So I kind of get my point in my head and then I just start writing and I tell the story. And every commentary I wrote from the time I hit the first letter to the time I was done, it probably took me, 10 minutes.
Are you serious?
I don't write. No, I'm dead serious. Yeah. I don't write and then work on it for days and days. No, I mean, they would tell me
these things are beautiful, and it took you but what had happened was you were thinking about it.
I said this one. Yeah. I've been thinking about it forever.
Yeah.
I said this to a guy one time on an article, and I said, I don't even know if I should say this, but I tried to get 2 or 3 lines. And I said, then I write to the lines. I'll come up with 2 or 3. And like in the Michael Sam commentary, the line that I was really worried about, but I thought would be pretty effective was, I'm not always comfortable when a man tells me he's gay because I don't understand his world. But I do understand that he's part of mine.
Yes.
And Ellen DeGeneres says she just loved that line. And so that line, however it came to me, that line pops into my head like the night before. And then I'm sitting there and I go, all right, so how do I get to that line? And, that's the way I write. So I'll have a note and I'll have like 2 or 3 notes of lines. And then I just write to them. So I walked in that day. This is kind of funny to me. It always has been. So I walk in, I said, Sean, I think I've got it. Let me go write it up for you. So I go in and sure, it took like, I don't know, 8-9 minutes, just kind of, I'd sit back and yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, So I called him into my office and he goes, how the hell do you do that? I said, well, I mean, I don't know. He goes, yeah, he said, that's fine. He said, that's fine. I went, I'm sorry, what? That's fine. I mean,
fine.
It's a hell of a lot better than fine. So I called this very liberal friend of mine and I read it to him. And he goes, yeah, I think that's okay. I think that. Okay, really? So I'm then having drinks and a cigar with a couple of buddies of mine. One's very liberal. One I always call him so-so because he's very fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. So I read it to them, and they go, "Yeah, I think that'll do." And that should be acceptable. I'm like, the hell? I mean, I thought it was really pretty good, right? And
this should be etched into stone. What are you talking about?
Yes, I'm thinking we might want to put this on a mountaintop someplace. So anyway,
tablets.
I hit the air. I promise you, I hit the air thinking, well, it's very topical, obviously, because everybody's talking about Michael Sam. And it should work, and it's okay, and it's fine, and it'll do. And I read it on the air. Billy Sons, one of my favorite guys ever, pops his head around the camera. And he goes, so what do you think the reaction to that'll be? I said, oh, hell, I'll get about 100 emails, and, 50 of them will love it and 50 of them will hate it. I'm driving home. Sean calls me immediately. He said, that was unbelievable. I said, what do you mean? I said, you said it was fine. He goes, no, when you read it in your office and then you read it on the air, because like I'm reading it in my office. Well, here Michael Sam says, I just read the words.
All right.
On the air, I'm now punching it up and whatever. He said, Dale, I'm telling you, it's great. It's great. I still don't think much about it. I get home. I had 115 emails. I about a 30-minute drive. I thought, God, that's quite a bit. I mean, that's a little strong. I got up the next morning, I had 500. By the time I got to work, I had over 1,000. And now they're coming in from all over the country. Then I started getting them from Australia and England, Canada. I got one from Saudi Arabia. And I'm like, what? I mean, so I'm standing there, and this is absolutely true. Our news anchor was a woman named Shelley Slater. And she goes, you don't know what's happened, do you? I said, what? She goes, you've gone viral. I had no idea what that meant. I said, hell, I feel fine. I feel fine.
I don't have
I'm thinking, how big of an antenna do these some bitches have? I mean, they're getting me in government. I had no idea. When it was all said and done, I stopped counting at 6,000 emails. Now, these are the ones sent directly to me. These are not the Facebook postings of hate it, love it, whatever. Every state in the union and 27 countries sent me emails. And then Ellen calls. I did about 50 radio interviews around the country. I got some of the most incredible messages from young kids who were fighting with their parents or ashamed to tell their parents. And I mean, this was the most amazing thing. I was 64 years old when I wrote that. And I think I'm talking to you because of everything I did from 64 to 73. The best years of my life, professionally, 64 to 73. Now, the SMU story kind of rounds it out. The move from Omaha to Dallas, from Dallas, Channel 4 to Channel 8, interesting. I did the Cowboys games on the radio.
Your friendship with Troy Aikman.
With Troy Aikman. Yeah, I mean, did some really cool things with Aikman over the years. And I mean, that all kind of fleshes out the story.
Getting punched by Barry Switzer.
Switzer, yeah. Not backing down from Barry Switzer. Not backing down from Jerry Jones. That's all part of the story. But the real story of my life, and the tombstone, if indeed there was one, which there won't be, but if there was one, it would begin with Michael Sam. And I think there's a lesson in that for a lot of people, is that I was like your typical guy. I was starting to burn out. I hate that term, but I was starting to get kind of bored with the whole process. I think Channel 8 was getting a little tired of some of my liberal social commentaries.
I got to ask about
and I was, I'm going to retire at 65, and then it just explodes at the age of 64. And from 64 to 73, I've never enjoyed life more. I mean, Troy Aikman said this about me when I got that award in D.C. He said, I think if Dale was honest about it, his commentaries mean a great deal more to him than any game he's ever covered. And he's right. I said, no, probably about it. I would go to work on a typical day, and I'm like, no, okay, the Cowboys traded so-and-so, or the Rangers lost again, okay. But when something would spur me to write a commentary, I'm on fire. I mean, I was just literally on fire. And that changed my whole outlook as well. But to me, they weren't political as much as people say they were. And I understand. I'm trying to split that proverbial hair, but these are social commentaries. These were commentaries about the world we live in. I'm not saying if you're red or blue state or conservative or liberal, it's a social argument that I'm making. At least it was to me. Knowing full well that people in blue states would love me and people in the red states would hate me.
Yeah. So
But
wait, I gotta ask though. I mean, here you are in Dallas, which is blue, I guess, right?
right. No, goodness, no, we're dead red.
Well, Texas is dead red, but Dallas
Oh,
is,
you mean the city? The city? Oh,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely,
city's
absolutely, yeah.
blue.
Right.
Texas is blood red. And here you are, social commentary, whether you
Yeah, thank you.
social commentary. But about guns, about gay, about every kind of
Yeah,
thing that's going
the
on.
border,
Trump, about
the
abortion. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've written about it, but this is the whole key, and I think this is why it worked. And I've never denied. I, I, I'm not going to be so humble to tell you that I didn't like my commentaries. I thought they were pretty good. I thought the argument was good. I thought the writing was good. I thought the cadence of it, if you will, good. But the real reason that they resonated with so many people was because I was a 64-year-old fat white guy in a deep red state of Texas. I really believe this in my heart. If I was 35 years old, and I was stunning in my day, by the way, I was stunning in my day.
Absolutely.
If I had written that commentary, if I had written that exact same commentary when I was 35 years old, and I would have been working in Los Angeles, where I had turned down the job, I don't think 7 people would have noticed. Because what else would a 35-year-old guy in LA say?
Right.
But when a 64-year-old fat white guy in a deeply conservative state like Texas, now, yeah, the Dallas proper is blue. They loved it. But the Dallas proper is a small fraction of my audience. I mean, our signal goes a little bit outside the city limits, So, yes, the people in Dallas loved me, but the people in Fort Worth thought it was horrible. The people in Plano thought it was horrible. But I think people around the country, because almost every single email I got began with, "Dear Mr. Hansen, forgive me." But when I heard that an old white guy in Texas was writing about Michael Sam, I was prepared to kick in my computer screen. Only to find out, sir, that you're a genius. You're a genius. If they agree with me. Now, the other people hated me, of course, didn't quite go that way. But I don't have any pretensions about my my so-called writing, my so-called ability. I'm comfortable in my skin. I'm comfortable of what I do. But I think without question, a major driving force to the success of my own personal career and the success of those commentaries was that it came from a person who looks like me. And that's not false modesty. That's not trying to be humble or some nonsense.
No,
I just
you
don't
make a
think
really good point, because I mean, that's what I would always, every time I watched them, and you started to Jones for them because I needed Dale Hansen.
Yeah.
When's the next one come out? And then I'd send it out to my wife and the family and what. Yeah. But how's he doing this? He's in Texas. I mean, and so you make
that was never. I mean, the station for the longest time. This is kind of funny. For the longest time, the station actually pushed me to do it. They would actually come to me when we had this shooting. This is another classic example. For the most part, all of my commentaries, they had a sports hook.
Right.
Like Michael Sam. Okay, I'm talking about gay rights in America, but Michael Sam is a football player, right? I even did one shooting commentary, but it was at the congressional softball game in D.C. And I wrote about how, hey, there's a softball game, and next thing you know, they shoot people. And I tried real hard. If I was writing about drug abuse or, the latest football player that got busted for drugs. Up until we had the shooting in Dallas, where there was a Black Lives Matter protest march, and a guy opens fire and he kills 6 police officers in like 3 blocks from our station. The next morning, Mike Devlin, the general manager at the time, he called me, wakes me up, and said, "I want you to write about that tonight at 10." And I said, "Well, Mike, I mean, how would I do that? I mean, I said, there's no sports hook. There's no sports hook. He said, I don't care. He said, you write about social issues all the time. I said, yeah, Mike, I do write about social issues, but there's always a sports hook. And he goes, well, I don't care. He said, you've got like 10 hours, 12 hours to figure it out. And I'm like, man, I'm going to write about the killing of 6 police officers in downtown Dallas on my sportscast. And I'm serious. I was like, I'm not sure I can do that. And as I'm driving to work, that proverbial light flashes. When the shooting took place, everybody in our station was running for cover. Now, the shooting was 3 blocks away. And we have locked doors everywhere. And my producer grabs me, literally grabs me, and said, we got to go hide. And I'm like, well, hide where? What do you want to do? Go in the bathroom and hide in the stall? I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, he's not going to get in the building. I mean, it's, I was sitting at my desk with my feet up, watching the Rangers playing Baltimore. And all hell was breaking loose, right? And that's what my opening line was. I said, I was watching the Rangers game last night in Baltimore. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that, because in the 5th inning, all hell broke loose in my city. And then I started writing about the shooting and about how complacent that I was. Yeah, great. I said, and I think I said something to the effect of, the problems of America have finally come to my hometown. They've come to 3 blocks from where I work. But the Rangers are on TV and they're getting shut out. And then I worked my way through it, and I have all my lines and my quotes. I blew up our lieutenant governor's a moron, guy named Dan Patrick. Right. And Dan Patrick said that day, he blames the Black Lives protesters, the Black Lives Matter protesters. And I said, our lieutenant governor, and I thought I was going to get in trouble for this, but Mike Devlin he said it was one of the best lines he'd ever heard. I said, our lieutenant governor blames the peaceful Black protesters for the shooting last night because our lieutenant governor is a fool. Didn't call him an idiot, didn't call him a moron, didn't even name him, just zing with a little stiletto. He's a fool. He's just a fool. And I was told he got crucified. I mean, people were just, even his friends were like, hey, there's our fool, the lieutenant governor. And I wrote it, and then I had the call back. I said, incidentally, the Rangers lost in Baltimore last night, 9-1. And I'm almost embarrassed to tell you I know that, because all hell broke loose in my city. And
goosebumps.
I got letter after letter. People wrote articles about it saying that I had just summed up the whole shooting issue in America in about 2 minutes, that I'm numb to it. And I am to this day. I mean, I listened to all the debates, and there was a guy on the networks last night talking about, we can't allow this to happen. I said, well, it's too late for me. And we had 19 people killed in Uvalde. And I'm like, wow, I guess there's nothing we can do, which is another commentary I wrote. And the line that I used was, there's nothing we can do. Because that's what they always say, right? And they brought that commentary that I wrote in 2018 about the Parkland shooting. That's now circulating again for some reason.
That's why I was like, it keeps going over and over again.
Because and there's one person, well, not one, but several people pointed out, the tragedy of that commentary was and is that I could have written it last week.
All right, nothing changed. Nothing's changed. Was that?
And I wrote, and I wrote this piece, and I used that line one time but apparently there's nothing we can do. I mean, if we're concerned, we're going to protect our children. So we're going to ban books so they don't get exposed to these evil books. We're going to make sure they don't ever get in the neighborhood of a drag show. That would destroy our children. I'm sorry. People are walking in with military rifles, killing our kids. Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
Well, what if we had an armed security guard? Well, I don't know. The bank had an armed security guard. How'd that work out? In Louisville,
your senator had talked about banks being
he wanted to have one door. He wanted to have the school have one door, and the fire marshal might have an issue. I mean, it is so incredibly stupid. I mean, as I said in one of the commentaries, we have 5% of the world's population and 31 or 34% of the mass shootings. Because we're the only country in the world that has issues with mental health. We're the only country in the world that has people that are in such great despair that they shoot people. Really? I mean, it doesn't happen in Australia anymore. It doesn't happen in France. It doesn't happen in Finland. It doesn't happen in Europe. It doesn't happen in Canada. A lot of hunters in Canada. A lot of hunters in Canada. It's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. Now, people say, well, you're making your political argument. Well, no, I prefer to think of it as a social argument.
No, I prefer to walk into the Safeway and not worry about getting shot.
I take this attitude now, and I'm not proud of this. I am happy that I'm able to do it, but I'm like, really? I mean, what am I going to do? You can't go to a grocery store. We have what do they call it? Permitless. You don't need a permit to carry a rifle. And my wife is shopping at the local grocery store a couple of weeks ago, and the guy was walking through the aisles with a rifle.
He's overcompensating for something.
Well, I mean, yeah, because something's not as long as his rifle. I think we're pretty sure of. You know, but I'm like, what part of you says I think I'm going to go into the Hy-Vee store and get some milk and ice cream, and I need a rifle with me? I mean, what kind of a person does that? But I do. I'm numb to it now. I mean, I still care a great deal, and if there's anything I can do to help stop it, I'll do it. But I just sit there and I say, Chris, did you hear about the shooting in Louisville? Did you hear about the shooting in Memphis? Have you seen the story yet about? And I'm not going to change my life. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I'm just not prepared to. The only thing I did, like during the COVID, I changed my life.
So you've been retired now, what, 2 years?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Do you miss it?
No. I miss the hell out of it every other Friday. That pension money, and thank goodness I have it, but that pension money doesn't go quite as far as every other Friday did, you know. And I'm really surprised. Every so often, and just, you know, there've been a few issues lately that I kind of wish I had that platform back just for the commentary.
Well, couldn't you do them online? Couldn't you still do them?
I don't know. I probably could, but I don't know how to do all that stuff. And
I
started a podcast. I started a podcast, and I thought, well, that seemed to have some potential for me.
Yeah.
Because I love, as you might notice here, I kind of like expanding on some of my stories, you know, that I couldn't do in a sportscast or something. But I did 4 podcasts, and I didn't have the support group around me that I needed. So I didn't like the way they came off. You know, it was amateur hour. You know, I said to a woman that I was working with, and I think it really ticked her off, but I said, you know, you're giving me a high school play. You know, you're making this podcast about the equivalent of a high school play. And I said, I'm trying to give you Broadway. Now, nobody goes to the high school play and they don't boo the kids off the stage, but they leave there knowing that's a high school play. Right. And I want to give you Broadway. I want to give you something that's really good. And then this is funny. I swear to you, she goes, Dale, you have to understand, I'm a Republican. I'm like, what? And she goes, well, obviously you and I don't agree about a lot of things politically. I went, so you just figured that out based on my third podcast? I mean,
where have you been?
She approaches me saying that I've been watching you for 30 years. I'd love to have you do a podcast. And then she doesn't like my politics, apparently. I don't know. But and I had a couple other people offer me, you know, to get involved with a podcast. But and one I thought I might do. And then they said, here's some ideas for your first show. Problems with the Cowboys' offensive line. Should the Mavericks make a trade for a big man? I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff. If I don't remotely care about what the Cowboys are going to do next year. if I was going to do a podcast or a radio show of any significance, it would be about my commentaries. It'd be about not politics, social issues. Yeah. And I tried to, this is another way. I talked to CNN at one time, and this was after the award in DC, and I had a pretty good acceptance speech. I think it was pretty well received. And some people reached out to me, and I said, I would love to do that. I would love to be like on CNN and do commentaries. Station wasn't crazy about it, but we were still in the debate process as to whether or not they would allow me to do it. And by this time, we had a new general manager. He was a very conservative guy. And it was pretty obvious he didn't like a lot of my social commentaries. He kept throwing up the occasional roadblock. He never killed one. To his credit, be very clear, he never killed one. But he did make me jump through hoops that I never had to jump through before. But anyway, I'm talking to CNN. And she says to me, well, have you written anything recently? And I said, yes. And she goes, well, can you send it to me? Let me see what you got. And it was about Tiger Woods getting the Congressional Medal of Honor, or the Presidential Medal of Freedom, rather, it was, which I thought was stupid. I love Tiger Woods, the golfer, but really?
Yeah.
Thought it was stupid.
Some other things going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I sent him the commentary. 2 days later, they've got the great Rick Riley on with this guy from ESPN.com debating Tiger Woods and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And the guy from ESPN.com used 4 of my lines. And I'm watching the interview, and I'm livid. I said, well, why am I not on there? You know, I mean,
right.
I think Rick Riley is just a flaming genius. I mean, but this guy? And then all of a sudden he starts talking, I said, and then he's going to say this, and I swear to God, he said it.
I say it here, it comes out there. Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is how it works for a producer. I write it, he gets to say it, you know. And I was livid. Now, I'm not saying that ESPN fed him my script, but I'm just saying.
Maybe they, yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
And you guys do this, yeah.
That I finished the sentence on at least 3 different occasions, and but so that was the end of that. And I think I could have been. You know, somewhat decent at it. And
what would you write about today?
Oh, it'd be back around these shootings and everything today, probably. I would like to write about Trump and all the different legal hassles. I mean, I'd love to write about all that stuff. And I think I think I would have some takes and some opinions that not everybody thinks all the way through. But here's the other problem. When I mentioned getting numb to the shootings, I'm also getting jaded by the politics. I'm still fascinated by politics. I mean, I sit in my recliner and I watch, and I'm one of the, I go through all the dials. You know, I got friends of mine who I'd never watch MSNBC, or I'd never watch Fox. Well, I watch them both. As I always tell people, I watch Fox every day until I catch them in an absolute unequivocal lie.
So you watch them 5 minutes a day?
I watch about 40 to 50 seconds. I mean, I don't know that I've ever made it. I've never made it to a commercial break. I know that. No, I got a buddy of mine. He's so conservative, and he watches only Fox. I got another liberal friend of mine who never watches it. I said, well, no, I've done it. So I'll turn on. All right, school shooting in Memphis, or Uvalde, whatever. I go to CNN, school shooting in Memphis, all the ambulances, cops. I go to Fox, crime at the border. Immigrants are flooding the border. Crime in San Francisco.
You know what I noticed? The headline, if you look on a liberal blog or, website, and then you look on a conservative website, it's essentially the same headlines, just reversed.
Yeah,
the people, the other side.
Exactly. No, it to me. See, I think here's the problem, though. I think it's been a slow process to get there, but this all fell apart when the networks finally realized we can make money off news. I mean, when this all started, I mean, the networks had like a 15-minute newscast out of a public service. Edward R. Murrow was a public service. And then they started to realize, wait a minute, we make money off this. And then it became, well, now we got to get the ratings. Now we have to appeal to the audience.
Yeah, the bean count.
That's where,
yeah,
that's where we're seeing it in this Dominion lawsuit against Fox. I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how Tucker Carlson does it. I swear, there's not a check big enough. I promise you, there's not. Because I lost a lot of not Tucker Carlson money, but I was told several times, if you don't quit criticizing Barry Switzer, you're going to lose your radio broadcast, which was about, $80,000 to do football games on the weekends. And I said, okay, and then I guess I'm out. I quit. There's just not enough money. I mean, I promise you, there's not. I would walk away before I would be Tucker Carlson and sit there with Trump lying to me, and just with that moronic look he gets on his face, and just nodding his head. When there's an email from Tucker Carlson saying, I hate him passionately. He's a demonic force. I mean, how do you do that?
And then you go do an interview with him and kiss his ass, they did a few nights ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I just don't get that. I mean, I swear to you, I don't get that. And then but this happens in every case. It happened. It even happens to me. I was told on more than one occasion, Dale, our conservative viewers just don't like what you're saying. Hell, I don't care. Because here's my point. As arrogant as this probably sounds, my liberal viewers loved it. And half of the conservative viewers who hated it watched me.
Right.
I mean, if I had a nickel for every time somebody sent me an email or a letter saying, I stopped watching you years ago, and last night, man, you just ticked me off. I mean, I get that all the time. I would get that all the time. I never. Now, yes, working in Dallas, I cover the Cowboys. I cover the Mavericks, people would move here from Indiana going, I can't believe you don't cover college basketball. I said, yeah, I know. I was in Indiana last week, and I can't believe you didn't cover that Rangers game. I mean, what are you talking about? So I'm catering to the audience, but I'm never catering the stories. Does that make any sense? You understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. I don't make my Cowboys coverage better or nicer to appease the viewer. I never did. And this is when I knew I was right. In 1988, the Cowboys were 3-13. In 1989, the Cowboys were 1-15. I was one of the most vilified sports personalities in Dallas. You're just a jerk. You hate the Cowboys. You've always hated the Cowboys. You're just outrageous. Then they won a Super Bowl in 93 and 94. And I might be the best sportscaster this country's ever seen, because they love the message. Right. And then they hang the message on the messenger. I probably did my best work. Have you ever tried to broadcast a game for a team that's 1-15?
No.
That takes some serious skill.
You got to have some things to talk about. Yeah.
I think Brad Sham and I'm dead serious when I say this, I think Brad Sham and I did our very best work in 88 and 89 when the Cowboys won 4 games in 2 years.
Oh, in 2 years.
Because in 93 and 94, when they won back-to-back Super Bowls, hell, you and I could have done that. I mean, just go. I mean, what are you going to say?
Yeah,
hey,
it's all there for you. They're a silver platter. Yeah.
But I would never. I was told hundreds of times in my life, you can't say this about Nebraska. You can't say this about Creighton. You can't say this about SMU. You can't say this about the Cowboys because we might lose the audience. Well, one, we're not going to. We're just not. Now, would Fox lose an audience if they started telling the truth? Yeah, probably. I think a lot of the Fox viewers would turn away, But to sit there and put news in your name and say the things they say, and the other flip side of that is, and this is where we have another problem, is people don't really understand what news is anymore. Rush Limbaugh was not news. Tucker Carlson is not news. If Tucker Carlson would just stand up and say, hey, I'm just a guy with a point of view trying to make a buck, selling shoes.
Not the Dominion lawsuit, but the previous lawsuit, didn't they just say we were entertainment? We're not.
Yeah. Well, they always fall back on entertainment when they get caught. Don't you remember the lawyers about Tucker Carlson? No person would believe what he says.
Yeah.
I said this when that came out. I said, if anybody at Channel A ever defended me by saying that no sane person would believe Dale Hansen, I'd walk out the door. Yeah. I'd walk out. That's their defense, that no sane person would believe that. But when they're telling the truth and reporting it, oh, no, now we're serious. Oh, we just caught you in a lie. No, I'm just an entertainer. But I think so many times they almost all do it. And if you see what's happening, CNN now, I think, is legitimately trying to find that middle ground. It's kind of boring.
It's boring. It's boring. I don't know what they're trying to figure things out. I give them credit for, trying to pull back.
They're trying.
I don't think they were liberal before. I think they were covering the news and delivering truth. But
I think that's also part of the problem. I think a lot of the so-called liberal aspect of CNN, not all of it, but the fact that they were covering a president who lied, 2,500 times,
Yeah, what are you supposed to do if you don't know how you do the lies?
But they all, it doesn't take long to realize that, as you said, the headlines are basically the same in terms of the content, but Barack Obama says something and MSNBC almost wets themselves. They're so excited.
That's true.
And Fox, Obama could have put a car in every driveway and a chicken in every pot. And Fox would have said, more cars on the highway, congesting up, jamming up the roads.
If we believed in climate change, we'd say, complain about it, but we don't. So we...
Chickens are being slaughtered because of the Obama policies. It's laugh out loud funny. But I'm serious. I've never met Tucker Carlson or any of those guys, but I would just love to, I don't know if you can even have a conversation with him, but I would just love. I had a buddy of mine, and again, I mentioned this a moment ago, very conservative guy, just loves Tucker Carlson. And he says to me all the time, I get all my news from Tucker Carlson. I said, well, then in that case, you actually get none.
You're not getting any news. Yeah.
But he's sitting on my patio. We're drinking wine, puffing on a cigar. And he says, Trump never lies. He said, why are you so hard on Trump? Trump never lies. And I said, really? And I rattled off like 7, 8, 9, just, meaningless, And I said, would you like me to keep going? I said, I can do this for like an hour. He goes, wow, they all lie. I said, well, no, wait. And this one becomes so frustrating. I said, that's not what you said. You said Trump never lies. I just listed off 10 things that he lied about. And now you immediately fall back to, well, they all lie. I said, well, that's another conversation. And I've done it a dozen times. I haven't talked to my sister in about 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's kind of horrific.
Yeah.
But I haven't talked to her, shortly after Michael Sam. Because of the things that she said, I said, I don't want to hear that ever again. I mean, she is so crazy. I mean, she's just in that QAnon bubble. And I used to vacation at her place in Colorado every year. I mean, just gorgeous out in Colorado in the summertime. And we're done now. I mean, we're done. Because we would sit there and have these discussions, if you will. My favorite one was her husband's a police officer. And this is during the Obama years. And I said, what's your problem with Obama? I said, really? And he looks at me and he goes, he's trying to redistribute the wealth. I said, he's doing what? He's trying to redistribute the wealth. I said, well, then what are you worried about? You don't have any money. I said, if anybody should be worried about it, and I'm not, it would be me.
Yes.
I said, you're going broke, because my sister's had diabetes since she was like 17. I said, the medical bills are killing you. Rhonda, you could now, although you're older now, you could never leave her first job because you would never get insurance. Now you could have. And all you sit there and do is complain about Obama? I mean, but it was based in racism. It was absolutely based in racism. And so I just shut her out of my life. I just had to shut her out of my life. But it's an incredibly sad thing that I've seen happen. But people confuse it. MSNBC is not news. CNN, I think, is trying real hard, but they're not even really news. Fox is definitely not news. Rush Limbaugh is not news. I think the three networks are still trying to be news. I really do. I think all three of them are trying to present a more or less straightforward newscast. But the reality is our society has become boring. And it's like this Howard Stern concept. A really smooth disc jockey with a great voice, which used to be the key. You got to have a great voice. You got to be smooth. You got to be funny. You got to play all the right records. Now get out of here. I want Howard Stern. He'll say things that'll just shock the hell out of you and make you swerve into a ditch. And he makes $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
And people figured out, and now they do it across the board. I need to say something just outrageous so that people will notice me and I get more clicks. People accuse me of that all the time. I said, no, here's the scary thing. I believe everything I say. that might bother a lot of people, but I never said anything on the air that I didn't believe.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it. We've taken up a lot of your time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all you've done, all the entertainment and information and the social commentaries. I live for them. I love that they can come back around, that they're still going viral, and that just the honor to sit here and talk with you. And maybe someday I'll be able to sit on the porch and smoke a cigar with you someday.
Anytime. Mark, I appreciate it. As you do. This retirement life, you asked me if I miss it. No, I miss the opportunity to talk to someone other than the lovely Mrs. Hansen. And you filled that bill today, so I appreciate it very much.
Call anytime.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Dale. Great to meet you. Thank you so much.